Okay, let me go ahead and hit escape and escape. And someone's asking about how exactly did I tile those reports together. Well, I'll show you real quick. I'm going to click on Window, close all, and that will basically close the windows together. And then I'm going to go to Reports, Company Financial, Profit and Loss, and I'm going to follow the keyboard shortcut to make it as fast as possible. So actually, if you look at Reports and you see how the R is highlighted, and then you go to Company Financial and you see how the F is highlighted, and then you see Profit and Loss Standard, how the S is highlighted, that means that if you press Alt RFS, that will pull a profit and loss. So I'll do it just with the keyboard. Alt RFS, that will pull a profit and loss. And then I'll do Alt RFB, as in boy, that will pull the balance sheet. And then I'm going to go to Window, Tile Vertically, but I will also use the keyboard shortcut. So I'll do WV. So Alt WV, that will tile them next to each other. So if you really wanted to, let's assume for a minute that you're a QuickBooks consultant and you really want to impress someone when you first look at QuickBooks. First thing you want to do is the minute you log in, you do Alt W A, which will close everything, and then do Alt RFB. You can leave the Alt button down, Alt RFS, then leave the Alt button down, WV, and basically within like 10 keystrokes, you get P&L, balance sheet, all next to each other, tile vertically, and trust me, that will impress anyone. Whenever you're pulling reports, and this is the most common thing that we do is we pull a profit and loss and balance sheet for analysis. Let me hit escape. I'll just keep one report open here. Now, another few really important things about customizing a report is customizing the look. So if you right click on the keyboard, right, you have to right click on the keyboard, you're going to get a window pop up. Sorry, not on the keyboard, on the mouse. You right click on the mouse, or you click on the right button, you're going to get this window pop up that allows you to change essentially the font, the size, and then hit OK and hit yes. And basically all the font and all the size will be changed on the spot. So if you wanted to make a report's font bigger, real quick, you just right click, change the size. And that does in fact reflect on the printout. So when you go print it, that will affect the printout. So just be careful that big fonts obviously take more ink and more space on the printer. Now, really important thing about printouts, let me just do here all. You can also, when you print a financial statement, you can break them down by sections by clicking on this little box here. Again, this often forgotten box here called Page Break after each major grouping. So if I click on that one, basically in a balance sheet scenario, we're going to get assets in one page, and then we're going to get liabilities and equities on a second page. Really, really clean. For longer financial statements, that becomes something really useful. Same thing with dealing with a profit and loss. If you split the major groupings, you will get income and cost of goods sold on one page and expenses on another page. Now you can also force to do one page wide but one page high. And if you do that, QuickBooks will now change the fonts around to make it fit. So you don't want to mess too much with the fonts to avoid these issues if you're trying to then force the width and the height when it comes to the printout. Okay, let me hit escape. Let me pull up a profit and loss again and show you something else really important with report formatting. So when you pull the report, the default formatting is what is set, right? So exactly how you see it, that's how it comes up. If I want to change what comes up by default, like if you're sitting there having to zoom in and making that font bigger every time, change the preference. So we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and then we'll play with a couple of these preferences to show you. So for example, here under Company Preferences, there's a couple of important ones to know. For example, here where it says Show Accounts By, okay, if I click on name and description, and then I'm going to hit OK, I want you to take a look at how the income accounts will have a parenthesis next to it. I'm going to hit OK. You see how every account has a parenthesis next to it? That is because in my chart of accounts, any account that I pick, let me just pick here I'll pick my sales account here, my default sales account. If I give, whoops, let me right click and hit edit. If I put something in the description here saying Hector is great, okay, that's part of the description. For the most part, that information is hidden. You don't see it on the chart of accounts, but if you decide to show it on the financial statement or on the reports by having that option there to show the description, that's an option. Now, what are some applicable situations in which I've used that? For example, I have a client that we do all the financial statements in English, but a few of the owners, a few of the users want the financial statements in Spanish. So what we do is we translate all the accounts into Spanish, and then when it's time to give them the report, we choose description only, and then it will be based only on the description. So that becomes just a kind of a really interesting way of working with that. Okay. Now on the item side, that's also really important. Let me show you. Let me pull up an item report, and that's an area of a lot of concern because a few people. Let me do like a sales by item report. Okay, because a few people don't want to see in parentheses the description, especially for some of these like really long descriptions that take a lot of space on the report. So if you're working with items in which the item name itself it's clearly identified where you don't need a description, then you want to hide the descriptions that come up by default there. So the way we do that is we go to edit preferences, and then under company preferences, we're gonna take out name and description and put name only. And just notice once I hit OK, all of those parentheses with descriptions go away. And that's important because for some people, it's just more information that they want to endure. And when it comes to detailed reports, that's also kind of a big deal. And I'm going to show you that in a second. So let me pull up a profit and loss report, or let's just do it better. Let me show a detailed report that contains details from an invoice. I'm going to go to transaction detail. I'm going to click here dates. I'm going to click this fiscal year. Under filters, again, I'm going to choose transaction type, and then I'm going to pick invoice. So kind of the same premise as before. Then under detail level, I'm going to do all except summary, which is going to only include the details of the invoice. So I'm going to hit OK. And there it is. And I'm also going to enable, because it's not enabled by default, the specific item. So I'm going to go into customize report. Under columns, I'm going to go to item, select that item, and then the description, and then hit OK. So there's my item, there's my description. Now, if I wanted that description to be part of the item name, then I would go to edit preferences, company preferences on the reports and graphs, and then where it says show items by, I would click name and description, hit OK, and then you're going to see the descriptions as part of the item. Again, it's really important preferences. You choose what's better for you. I'm not specifically saying that you want to show them or you don't want to show them. What I'm saying is you can do whatever you want. Now, here where it says item description, it's a really, really good question in terms of what description shows up there, the default item description or the description in the invoice. So let me show you. I'm going to double click on there, and I'm actually going to change the description on the invoice just to show you. I'm going to put here invoice description of item and hit save and close. Now you will notice on the report, okay, where am I? Let me hit refresh. In the report where it says item description, this is still coming from the specific item name, okay? But the one that I typed in is now actually the memo. So in detail reports, memo means the description of the invoice, for example, whereas item description means the description of the item list. So I'll just show you real quick by that. So I'm going to go into item list, and then I'm going to go into this floor framing and hit edit. And I'm going to change this to item description. Okay. And I'm going to hit OK and go back into that report. And now you can see how it says item description, which is what I just typed in, which is different than what we actually put in the invoice, which is invoice description of item. So those are really, really important things to keep in mind about how descriptions and memos work in QuickBooks. Now, another kind of semi-interesting thing here is if I actually go into that invoice and you see the actual memo box. Okay, so the actual memo box in there, the actual memo box has nothing. I'm going to put here memo from invoice. Okay, so I'm typing memo from invoice, and then I'm going to hit save and close. Now, most people will assume that if they're pulling a report and they're looking at a column very clearly that says memo, that memo should show up there. But the answer is no, because in a detailed report, the memo is going to be from the line item memo, not from the transaction memo. For me to see that memo that I just typed in there, I would have to do, and if you're guessing it, you guessed it, I would have to look at the summary portion of it, or maybe all in that particular case. So let me hit OK, and then we'll go down and we'll see it right there, memo from invoice. So that memo, it's now part of the source of the transaction, not part of the detail of the transaction. Now I'm going to double click on that one again, and I'm going to go in and erase the description altogether, right? So you see that there's no description there, no memo, and then I'll hit save and close. And you will notice now something really interesting happened. Even though I erased it, QuickBooks filled it with something else. So the way QuickBooks works is if you're missing any description or memo on a line item, it will grab it from the source and fill it in with information there, as long as it's blank, okay? Because if I actually just put, let's say, for example, I'm just going to put a dot there, just a period, and hit save and close, you will see that will now be replaced with a period, which is QuickBooks is doing what is there, just pulling the characters that are there, which happen to be a period. So I think those are extremely, really important things to keep in mind related to memos, source, and destination. So I wanted to really go deep into source and destination because I find that to be one of the really important ones. Now, another just kind of couple of quirky things about reports. Let me go ahead and show a profit and loss real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where in the profit and loss report, I can display accounts that are not being used. Okay, so right now it is displaying every account that is being used only. However, my chart of accounts is a little bit bigger than what we're seeing here. So I'm going to click on Customize Report. I'm going to go to Advanced, again, the Advanced tab. But now we're not looking at a detailed report. Now we're looking at a summary report, which contains different options on the Advanced section. It's the same Advanced button, just with different options. So here where it says Display Rows, I'm going to put here All. And then after I hit All, I hit OK, and then OK. And then what you end up seeing is every single account, even the accounts that were not being used, are showing here, and they're showing a bunch of blanks. Right? That's because we told it that we want to see the accounts that are not being used, and I'll tell you why. A lot of times I build a report for someone, and for example, that month they didn't use any travel, and they say, well, where's my travel? And then if they don't specifically see it with a 0 next to it or with a blank next to it, they'll freak out. They'll think the information it's incomplete. Now, some people may be asking, why are you showing blanks there and not zeros? that's actually part of the report formatting. So if I go to customize report and then I go to funds and numbers, here I can choose whether I'm going to hide zero amounts. So in this case, I can show zero amounts, or I can also hide my cents. See that? And then I hit OK. And then you see now it comes up with a bunch of zeros. And I can also hide the cents, which, by the way, a lot of people want to do that. A lot of people really want to hide cents because for whatever reason, um, you're going to use it for a tax return, or cents just give you, they just give you more information that you don't need. One thing I tell you though, from my experience, when you show cents, people get the impression that the numbers are more accurate. There's something about decimals that really give people this impression of accuracy and completeness. So I found it that when I take out the decimals, people think the numbers are being estimated or rounded for some reason, and it is. It's just hiding the decimal. So that's really up to you whether you think it's valuable or not to hide the decimals. Now, also, when you're dealing with anything has to do with sub accounts, notice that there's a little triangle next to any of these accounts, so I can manually click and collapse and expand any of these. So as long as I'm working on, I believe it's QuickBooks 2013 and above, there is that. Now, there's a keyboard shortcut for that, for collapsing it, which is Alt P. If you press Alt P, if you can do Alt P, it collapses and expands. So Alt P collapses and expands. So I'm just tapping Alt P on the keyboard, collapse and expand. Okay, that's another really important piece. And also, if you're dealing with a lot of data in here, you may also want to hide the header, which all you have to do is hit Alt A, and Alt A will hide the header. So Alt A hides the header, Alt P collapses and expands the sub accounts. All right. As much as I want to go and do this forever, I do have to respect the 1 hour time frame that we promised people we would do. Reports are actually one of my really important areas in which I focus personally a lot in my practice. So I'm very passionate about reports, and I can kind of talk about them all day long. So for next month, we're going to be covering enhanced inventory receiving, which is a QuickBooks Enterprise workflow that's not available in the other versions of QuickBooks. So we'll talk about those in detail. And then hopefully in January, it will be our last QuickBooks episode. We'll talk about importing data, which is the single hardest topic in January because a lot of people had to do a year's worth of data, accountants or whatever. And then hopefully after tax season, we'll start talking about some QuickBooks add-ons and some other technologies as we evolve. So thank you very much for joining the webinar. Visit the website. There's information posted there. Join the Facebook group and continue the conversation there. Please answer the polling question at the end. Kind of let me know if these are good topics and type of things that you'd like to see. Email me, hector@enterprise.expert or hector@garciacpa.com if you got any questions. Or if you need, one last thing. Whoops, why didn't I cover this? There is really important. There's a document. I put it right there on the handout section. If you're having a tough time downloading it, just email me. There's a document I recommend you download, which is called the complete, not this one. Yeah, the complete report list on QuickBooks. So if you actually download this document, it's about 50 pages long. It contains every single default report that QuickBooks has and a description next to it. If you're a consultant, right, you print this out in front of a client or something, and you have them sit down and read what every single report means and highlight the reports that they may be interested on working with. This really enhances any conversation, any interaction with anyone, because most QuickBooks Advanced people understand these reports, but most end users do not. So having this document that has every single default report there, on top of obviously the custom reports that we discussed, This is just a really good conversation starter, and it has a lot of reports that you've never used before. It has a lot of explanations on that. All right, I'll go ahead and stop the recording now. Again, thank you very much for joining the webinar, and I'll see you next month.